What's up, everybody? Mark here from Spyder's Corner. It's been a while since I've had new video content and blog content for you, but E3 is happening, so I figured this is the perfect time to jump back in, put some stuff down on the website, and yeah, just kind of bring it all back. E3 is definitely an exciting time of year, and it's cool to see what's going on and what the developers are working on. I wanted to start putting some coverage down, and the way I'm doing that this year is to have a high-level summary of each of the press conferences, and then from each, a few of the things that I'm excited for that came out of it. Today, my goal is to finish up the write-up for days 1 and 2, roll those together because day 1 was just EA, so I just wanted to get some of that out there. We'll jump right into that. EA's conference. I don't make it a secret that I am not a sports fan. EA's conference was actually pretty boring. They didn't really do anything new or out of the ordinary. It was all kind of by the numbers. They always have their sports franchises every year that they show with whatever new things are going on with those. And then refreshes of existing titles, DLC, stuff that's coming out like that. And then EA Originals, which is generally the best thing that they show. So yeah, EA's conference was pretty much... It's the weakest one so far. It's rough saying that, and like I know developers are working really hard on their games and whatnot, but it was just, yeah, it was boring. Going through it, if I needed to pick, again, top 3 things that came out of that conference that I enjoyed. A very short tease by Vince Zampella from Respawn Entertainment, where they teased Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. This is a new game that takes place between episodes 3 and 4 while the Jedi are being hunted down. So it's obviously a very dark place in the timeline. And I'm interested to see what they do with it. I've liked the Titanfall games to this point. They didn't have anything to show other than just the name release. He was kind of in the crowd when they kind of cornered him and had him give that announcement. So not much going on. He said probably holiday next year for a release date, but I'm always interested to see new Star Wars games and content. Big Star Wars fan. That period of the timeline is really cool too, and I know they're trying to do a lot with that currently, especially with the rumors of an Obi-Wan movie being in the works, but I digress. Back to EA's conference and E3. As I mentioned, the EA Originals are very cool. Last year they showed A Way Out, and this year they actually gave a shout out to the developers behind A Way Out because they're actually expanding their studio and doing a lot of hiring and growing and moving, which is great to see that EA's support of this indie development team kind of brought that about. And so this year, they brought out a company called Yome from Berlin, and their game is called Sea of Solitude. And I thought this was really cool just because the woman who came out, I believe she was the creative director for the game, you could just tell like the passion she had for the game and for the art form, and that she poured a lot of herself into this. And the premise behind it is that humans, when they get lonely, become monsters in this world. And so it's a story about bringing emotions into balance and just a very human experience that everyone can relate to. And I thought it was kind of cool. It's very stylized. Reminds me kind of Rime, that came out last year. It looks very interesting, and it's an indie title, so it'll be cool to see them get some exposure, and especially being on EA's stage, that they were able to do that. So that's cool. I think that'll be fun. Then lastly, Anthem. I mean, everyone knew Anthem was going to be big. It's BioWare. Their showing of it wasn't the best, but it was still cool to see some new content come out of that. I just can't stop thinking that it's just you're playing as Iron Man. You have different Iron Man suits, but it's Destiny in an Iron Man suit, which I'm not against. Flying around looks great. Flying underwater, or I guess swimming. Yeah, swimming. The 4 different classes that they showed. I mean, it all looks very interesting. I think what I'm hearing is that PvP is not going to be ready at launch, and it's not going to have the traditional relationship mechanics that you normally see in the BioWare single-player story games. But they did say this game could be played single-player as well. Not the ideal way to do it, and it'll be much harder to do that, but it is possible. It is meant to be played as a co-op game. So, still looks very cool. It's a very beautiful game. Looking forward to more content coming out from that. But that's kind of my top 3 from the EA conference. Like I said, nothing too terribly exciting there. It's EA. But moving on to day 2, a much more exciting day there. Microsoft had their press conference, which is actually a very solid conference. Microsoft covered a lot of stuff during their conference. Just came out swinging content-wise, announced that they had 50 games to show. Many of them were exclusive to Xbox or PC. Many of them were world premieres. And so they just came out with all this, and it was one after the other, after the other, after the other. And so it was very structured, but they were just bombarding us with footage and unveilings. And it goes to show that they are putting investment behind games. And one of the things they kind of threw in there was that they are working on the new Xbox hardware. And so that's interesting as well, especially on the heels of Yves Guillemot from, I probably butchered that name, from Ubisoft, stating that he believes the next console generation will be the last console generation. So Microsoft working on their new box. I'm sure everyone else is as well. That's just kind of always the state of things. So, but it was cool that they snuck that in there. Going into my top 3 picks from this conference, Halo Infinite. I'm a big Halo fan. They came right out of the gate swinging with this trailer. At first, you're not exactly sure what it is because it's just engine demo footage where they're showing various environments, animals, things walking around. And then eventually you start to see some technology cropping up. We see what looks like an old, dilapidated Pelican. And then it cuts to these like arches, and we see some Marines walking. And you're like, okay, well, Marines, that could be a lot of different games. As they start getting a little closer, you start recognizing like the very distinct helmets that they wear sometimes. And then it cuts and you see the Halo ring. And then you're like, okay, well, yeah, this is Halo. And then Master Chief pans back and he's standing there with his helmet by his side. And all you see is the helmet. Obviously, he puts that on. Trailer ends. Very cool. I'm excited to see more about that. I was a fan of the Halo series to date, even Halo 5, which I know a lot of people didn't like. We'll see what happens with that. I know people will complain about it, but they'll still buy it because it's Halo. So there were actually a lot of cool unveilings and information in the Microsoft conference, but Battletoads. I talked about this last year. Phil Spencer's been wearing the Battletoads shirt for years now. These different conferences and events that he's been going to, teasing it, and then we knew something was going to happen. And I guess they added the Battletoads to Killer Instinct, I believe. All 3 of them you can play as in there. But yeah, they announced a new Battletoads game. They didn't show any footage. Other than some stylized like cartoon graphics of like the tongues coming in and pulling stuff away off the screen. They did say it would be a 2.5D game, 4K visual, so it's just going to be very crisp, cartoony look to it, and 3-player couch multiplayer is available. And so that's cool. Love a good couch multiplayer game. It's great for friends coming over. It's great for a lazy Sunday fun day. And Battletoads. Hopefully it's not as hard as the NES one, because that game was like damn near impossible, but I am excited. It's been too long since we've seen the Battletoads, and also a pretty good time since we've seen a good like 2.5D just beat 'em up. So very interested to see that. And then now when people call game stores saying, hey, do you guys have Battletoads? People can say, yes, we do, because that's a new game coming out. I don't even know if people still make those Battletoads calls, but if they do, joke's on them now. But then lastly, Cyberpunk 2077. The cyberpunk kind of genre is very cool, very interesting, and CD Projekt Red makes fantastic games. I know people who love them very, very much. I played a decent amount of the first Witcher, but I've gotten so far behind in that series that it's slightly daunting to try and jump back into it. So now with Cyberpunk 2077, I don't have to worry about that because I'm jumping in fresh to a new series. I don't have to have any existing knowledge of the series. And yeah, so I'm excited. The trailer looked pretty sweet. Showed off a little bit more of the world than that first trailer where it was just the woman there getting shot at in slow motion by the like SWAT looking team. Then they said the world is even larger than The Witcher 3's world, which is supposedly ridiculously large. Largest game they've ever made. So this will be cool. I think it'll be a good one, and we'll go and see what it's like when it comes out. There's a bunch of others. Crackdown 3 made its appearance. Tunic. There were several Gears of War announcements. Sea of Thieves DLC. Just a bunch of stuff going on. But I think these 3 are probably the 3 that I'm most looking forward to from the announcements that were made. Also, At the beginning of the Cyberpunk trailer, there was like some DOS commands that were happening and then scrolling like code/text. And I noticed that there were a bunch of Xbox Live game codes in there. I tried to redeem like 10 of those codes, and they were all redeemed already before the trailer even ended. So thanks, internet nerds. Turns out it was for The Witcher 3 and the DLC on Xbox. I already have it for PC, so it's not that big of a deal that I didn't get one. But man, like those went so quickly. Like I said, I recognized what it was, opened something where I could redeem an Xbox Live code, and they were already gone. So people were on that for whatever reason, but that's the internet, I guess. Moving on, later that evening, Bethesda had their conference, and Bethesda, I think, still had the best all-around conference so far. Just with the content that they had, the jokes, the atmosphere, everything was just very well done. Andrew WK came out and played a song leading into a Rage 2 kind of content update. They made jokes about the Walmart Canada leaks because that's been big in gaming news, where Walmart Canada has just like posted a bunch of early release notices for pre-order titles that kind of ruined some announcements that people were going to make. So that's been kind of floating around, and people have been upset about that. But Bethesda took it in stride and even, like I said, called it out in the conference, which was pretty funny. The Skyrim Very Special Edition announcement with Keegan-Michael Key coming in and sitting down and playing Skyrim on his Alexa. That was funny. And then they even announced that it was coming to pagers and smart fridges and the Etch-a-Sketch, because internet has made a lot of jokes about that game being on everything now. So that was very self-aware of them, and just really funny for them to make that video and little presentation bit. I mean, they came out with a lot of good stuff in here too. Probably not as much as the Microsoft conference, but 3 standouts here for me were Fallout 76. We know more about that it is a full-fledged Fallout game, multiplayer, and I know there's a lot of questions about how the multiplayer is going to work exactly, that I guess we'll have to wait and see. That's survival with other people now. Will be interesting to see how that plays out and how the story is able to maneuver around other people being involved in this process. Love Fallout. I spend a lot of time on the games, even though I've never actually finished one of the Fallout games. Just get distracted and work on all the other content that's in there, so I end up not finishing them. And then the last 2, I feel bad saying that these were like in my top 3, because they weren't really anything. They were just teasers. Bethesda's first brand new IP in a while, Starfield, basically a sci-fi version of Fallout and Skyrim. So we're going to be in space. We're going to have all these options. We're going to have this sprawling world. I don't know if you'll be able to travel between planets and how that works, or what the size of this game is going to be. The fact that it is a new IP, a new single-player RPG in the Bethesda realm, I'm super excited for it, because I mean, their games are great. It's easy to just dump hours and hours and hours into these games. Even if you're not touching the main storyline, there's so much lore and everything to explore in their worlds that I'm just excited to explore one in space. I love sci-fi. So, and then Elder Scrolls 6, Skyrim, Oblivion, Morrowind. I put so many hours into all of those games. It's kind of absurd. I think I had over 200 hours in Skyrim alone, and didn't even touch the final DLC pack. There's a lot going on there, and then they're saying that this is probably going to be a next-gen title, so we won't see it on PS4 or Xbox One. It'll end up on whatever the next iterations look like for that. I mean, that's all good news. Those games are fantastic. They haven't let us down yet, so I'm just looking forward to those. The final presentation of the evening was Devolver Digital. This presentation is kind of like a non-presentation. It's all just very tongue-in-cheek, making fun of press conferences in general, making fun of the state of the industry at large and in general. The tone of these is kind of weird though. Like when I'm watching them, I feel like I'm being attacked. And I think that's part of the intent, is that, you know, people are doing stupid things. Then, you know, when new content is trying to be made, or like other companies are trying to do things that aren't successful, people are buying ridiculous things, doing ridiculous things. And so one of the jokes this year from the Devolver Digital presentation was loot box coin, obviously buying into the whole cryptocurrency and everything. But they call out the fact that it's nothing. Even the people who are making it don't know what it is, but you can buy it on the site, and the value is going to change consistently, and you'll never know what it's actually worth. And so I actually tried to go to the site during the presentation, and the site was crashed from people trying to go to the site and look for this thing. But earlier today I went and looked, and it's on there, and it's $75 right now. Very clearly states that it's not worth anything. It won't get you anything except the little like 3D printed coin that they have. So I'm curious if that's kind of like a Cards Against Humanity play where they're like, you give us money and we'll give you nothing, and we mean it. Like, you're not going to get anything for this. And so I'm wondering if that's just where this loot box coin is going to live. But it's interesting, and we'll see what actually happens with it. Yeah, they only showed a couple of games. I came in almost 10 minutes late to the presentation, and there were only like 3 games that I saw during the presentation. And one of them I wasn't even sure was an actual game because they made it seem like it wasn't. I mean, it's just, I feel like their presentations are just going to be like short trailers for their games and then a running joke from year to year where they just keep tacking on new things. And so the guy who was actually in the presentation last year, who was throwing his money at this computer screen and then got sucked in, actually came back from like the computer world or whatever to get vengeance on the hostess of the show, just shot her up. And it ended with her like being carried away and bleeding. It was very, like I said, very intense, very weird, in your face, kind of tongue-in-cheek humor there, but I'm not sure how exactly to feel about Devolver's presentation other than it's over the top and ridiculous, which I guess is what they're going for. So, but that ends day 1 and 2. A lot there, and there's even a lot more that did happen. So see below on Spyder's Corner for the full listing of everything that I took notes on that came through the presentations, my feelings on each of the titles that came through. If you stuck with me this long through my rambling, I appreciate it. So I'll be back shortly with Day 3 summary. Had a lot going on there. That was the Ubisoft, Square Enix, PC, and Sony press conferences. The final day will just be Nintendo. They're the only ones on that last day, and then I'll probably pick up any tidbits that were unveiled separately from the press conferences. There's generally a couple of those that come through. Throw those in with the Nintendo summary. Guys, I appreciate it. As always, check Spyder's Corner for what I'm working on, what I'm doing. I'm going to try and get back on Twitch here soon too. I need to play some games. I need some games in my life. And then also be sure to check out the podcast that I do with my friend Taylor over at Scrapped Productions, Popcorn and Nerds. It's available on Apple Podcasts, it's on Google Play, and you can also find it on the Scrapped Productions website. So I'll have a link for that as well. Thanks, guys, and take care until the next video.